Never before has it been more important to protect our right to hunt and fish than it is today. And that's why it's so important for us as outdoorsmen to be involved with organized hunter conservation groups that work for us at the state capitol and in Washington, D.C. The Texas Right to Hunt and Fish and Harvest Amendment, also known as Proposition 6, was on the November 3, 2015 ballot as a constitutional amendment where it was approved by the Texas legislature. This constitutional amendment recognizes the right of people in Texas to hunt, fish, and harvest wildlife subject to the laws that promote wildlife conservation. Many states have passed similar bills, guaranteeing their citizens the right to carry on the hunting conservationist heritage. But what are the financial benefits of hunting? According to the National Shooting Sports Foundation, sportsmen contribute nearly $8 million every day to conservation. Hunters and shooters have paid nearly $7.1 billion in excise tax since the inception of the Pittman-Robertson Act in 1937. The U.S. hunting industry alone generates nearly 600,000 jobs, and hunters have funded more than $14 billion in conservation projects in North America to protect our fish and wildlife. Hunters generate nearly $5 billion in annual federal tax money. The hunting industry, if you couldn't gather this, does far more for conservation of wildlife than any other non-hunting or animal rights organizations ever dreamed of doing. One such organization that works every day to protect your rights to hunt is the Safari Club International. My guest in this episode is Korley Sears. Korley is the Chapter Development Coordinator with SCI out of Tucson, Arizona. Korley is also a die-hard bow hunter, and this year he drew a coveted Arizona strip tag where he harvested a monster 220-plus inch velvet mule deer with his bow. It's a great story that we're going to share in the podcast. If you like this episode, be sure to support your local right to hunt and fish by getting involved in your local Safari Club International chapter. And then give us a review on iTunes and Facebook so we can continue bringing you the podcast. Episode number 8 of the Bucks to Business podcast starts right now. Have you ever wondered what drives the passionate entrepreneurs and interesting people in the hunting, fishing, and outdoor industry? Well, I did, so I set out to meet them. Aldo Leopold said, "There are those who can live without wild things and those who cannot. These are the exclusive interviews with those who cannot." My name is Kasey Mock. In 2008, I turned my passion for wildlife into a career when I launched our hunting firm, Fever Pursuit. Our family of companies has grown and now includes wildlife management and ranch real estate sales. I get to work with some of the best people and top ranches in the country, and I want to share their stories of adventure, failures, and the business principles that have led to their success. This is the Bucks to Business podcast presented by Mock Ranches. Korley, thanks for flying in, buddy.
Glad to be here.
You got jet lag?
Oh, no, not too bad. Getting used to it. A lot of travel this time of year.
A lot of travel.
Yeah.
What's your role at Safari Club International, and why does it include so much travel?
Well, I'm a chapter development specialist is my title right now. I used to be chapter services guy.
Okay.
But really what that is saying is essentially it's a liaison position. Okay. So SCI has about 80 chapters around the world, primarily, in the U.S. and Canada. But we have one here in Austin, so, I go help them with all the things that they need. Could be nonprofit tax, work or whatever that is, fundraising ideas, just all the little things that go into putting on a banquet and the projects they have throughout the year. So it's fun work because you get to meet a lot of people.
Yeah.
They're hunters,
You travel a bunch, though.
Travel a bunch.
Here's a regional deal? You in a region of the United States, or are you all over the country?
Well, I have assigned regions, but they're kind of all over the place.
Okay.
Really from East Coast to West Coast.
Okay. So. You're based out of Tucson, Arizona.
Tucson, Arizona.
Okay. By way of Nebraska.
By way, yeah. Sandhiller.
Sandhiller?
Yeah, if you've ever been there, you kind of know what that's like.
That was my first experience in the Sandhills was with you and J.W. Simonson last year, hunting archery mule deer, Halloween weekend. Cold, son of a gun.
Cold, yeah. Well,
Dadgum, it was cold. But we had a good hunt.
Yeah, it was.
It was my first experience at the Sand Hills. I had no idea there was that much grass up there.
It's a sea of grass.
It's a sea of grass and big mule deer hiding in the washouts and blowouts.
Yeah, that's it's when you first if you've never been in that country, the first time you go through there, you look around. Well, there's not much here.
Yeah,
there's a lot more there than what you initially meets the eye.
Mm-hmm. Well, I wanted you to come on so we could talk about the mission of Safari Club International 2 episodes ago. So I guess it would have been episode 6. We interviewed Dr. Gerald and Stephanie Watrich, who are the president and vice president of Safari Club International's Austin chapter.
Right.
And then this past Saturday, we had their banquet, the Hunter Heritage Banquet here in Austin, and it was awesome, man. We probably had 300 people there, I guess. The auction was very successful. The raffle deal was very successful. And Gerald and Stephanie do a phenomenal job of promoting SCI. They're so passionate about what they do. So I wanted you to come in and give us a snapshot of what SCI is doing nationally, how people can get involved with SCI nationally, and just as a person, you got a very broad background in hunting and agriculture. So we got some good stories to tell. And then we're not going to let you get away without talking big mule deer, because you drew a pretty coveted mule deer tag this year.
Yeah, one of the best, Cup 2 or 3 best in the world. It's an incredible tag. I mean, it was
Arizona Strip.
Arizona Strip, yeah. Actually, there's 13B is the unit. I mean, it's really tough for non-residents to draw that tag. But, man, I've never seen so many big mule deer in just a few days. And I grew up around mule. Yeah, it was incredible.
You killed, too. We'll get to that story in a second. So we'll talk SCI, and if you want to get into the cattle business or something, you can get into that, and then we'll hit on some big mule deer stories. So tell us about Safari Club International. When I think Safari Club, as opposed to like Boone and Crockett or some other organizations, most people, I believe, think Africa, but I think that's inaccurate.
Well, I think that's true with a lot of U.S. hunters or American hunters. If you're not a traveling international sportsman, you're right. I think a lot of people do think that, which is not the case. Safari Club International, SCI is mission statement is for hunter advocacy, as well as wildlife conservation. So what SCI does primarily is we're out on the front lines, putting on these fights in capital cities like Austin.
Got a lobbyist team down Pennsylvania Avenue, lobbyist team.
And that's the other thing is, putting on that fight in D.C., and that's where the fights really matter. I mean, certainly here, hunters are going to be strong in Texas through a variety of organizations, but to make that fight in D.C., and hunting is more and more under pressure today, under attack from anti-hunters, and this is where we're trying to get the message out to your deer hunters. I mean, guys just like me, I'm passionate about hunting deer, but I love to hunt, everything, squirrels, quail, whatever. So those are the hunters and the numbers that really make a difference. And so we've had a membership push here recently to try to get more people to understand what SCI is doing, why we exist, and why their membership is so important.
How many members does SCI have? You said 190 chapters.
Yeah, 180, I think.
180 chapters,
somewhere right there. I don't know the exact number, but it's approximately right in there. There's about 50,000 members
pretty good
right now worldwide.
Pretty good sized organization.
Yeah, I mean, it's not a huge number organization, but I can tell you it's a very influential organization. I mean, we have, like I said, we have people all the way from just your average squirrel hunter, and that's what they like to do, to people that travel the world and hunt hunt the biggest, all the stuff in Africa and all those other things. So very prestigious type hunters. But hunting is for all of us.
Sure.
And so that's kind of the message we're trying to put out.
So what's going on at SCI that people should be aware of? Because there's a lot of organization to be a part of. You should probably be a part of all of them, by the way. I mean, if you hunt ducks, you shouldn't just be a member of Ducks Unlimited. You need to be a member of SCI and you're like Texas Wildlife Association and Ducks Unlimited, maybe Boone and Crockett, because they all have their niche in conservation and their niche in hunter rights and their niche in hunter heritage.
Right.
And so what's going on at SCI that's exciting right now?
Well, like I said, one of our big pushes and the things that I'm working on is the membership stuff. We're working about getting out there and spending more time with our chapters. And that's one of the reasons I'm in SCI today. I'll be in Kerrville, Texas tomorrow. But to get around and really talk, at the grassroots level. Sure. Because that's the approach. When we're talking about the chapter, we're talking about grassroots, and things get done that way. When you have a grassroots movement, people start talking about it, and they're telling their friends, things happen, versus, the top-down approach is, I don't think it's a model that's going to work for hunting.
Yeah. The thing I like about SCI is the amount of money what do you say? It's like a 70-30 split that stays with the local chapter. 30% goes national, 70% stays local.
Yeah, it's kind of a unique compared to other organizations out there. If you're a member of the Austin chapter, and whatever funds they raise throughout the year, it's actually 30% of their biggest fundraiser, single biggest fundraiser, is it goes back to national, goes back to SCI. The rest of it stays here. Typically, 100% of that money is going to go back to your national organization. If you're with some of these other conservation groups, with SCI, 70% staying here, and you use it on projects that that kind of fit the mission. A lot of times it's youth projects, or it could be mobility impaired hunters and those kind of things. So it's really cool projects, and we get out there and spend time with the kids, and maybe give some of these kids
people giving back.
Absolutely, that's the funnest part to me is introducing people to the outdoors like that.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Tell me about your background in the cattle business and how you went from the cattle business into the hunting business, because you've been at the top of that industry into now, and then I guess real estate also, and let's transition that way to see how we ended up at SCI and with the Arizona strip tag.
Well, I was always that kid who was interested in a lot of things. But I grew up, there wasn't a lot of things to do. There was nothing to do online, so which dates me a little bit. But spend time outdoors, that's what I like to do. And so I was either chasing deer or fishing, or I was, we were moving cattle or doing something. So, but I grew up in the cattle industry in Nebraska. I was the fourth generation. We sold the operation in 2010, and so when it comes to succession planning, I can tell you from personal experiences, if that's not done well, it's not going to end well.
Yeah.
So something that families need to consider. Well, it really
is an important message to our real estate clients, because
huge.
The majority of the large ranches that we sell seem like it's coming from some type of an estate issue. Mm-hmm. That's what happens.
I'm afraid these problems are only going to get worse. I mean, especially if we have tough market conditions. What's this property really worth? You might have one sibling saying, I think it's worth this much because I want you to buy me out. And the other one maybe trying to want to stay on the property. I can only pay you this much. And we end up having a lot of this. This is why succession planning is so key. And as an agent, you can really help your clients out if you can have those discussions. Those are probably going to be a lot of times comfortable discussions. But there are things you can avoid. I mean, that must be discussed, because from personal experience, I mean, my family did a terrible job when it comes to that sort, and just ended up in all kinds of, causing all kinds of problems.
We have some friends that inherited a really big ranch, and they couldn't even afford to keep it because of the estate tax.
Yeah.
And so even if your estate is done well, and your estate planning is done well, and the will's done fairly well, there's still a big tax burden to the heirs of the estate. And hopefully this new administration will do some things to fix that. Because that's, for rural landowners, it's like robbery.
Oh,
it's like robbery.
Yeah, it is. And we're on the verge of the biggest wealth transfer in human history with this generation, transitioning out. The question is, can we get it transferred to the next generation? Hopefully, ideally, I'd like to see a lot of that stay in local producers' hands. Yeah. I think it's good for our rural economy.
It's super good.
It's good for America to have.
No doubt.
We don't want one person to own everything. We like to have a lot of diversity out there. So
yeah, no doubt. Okay, you got into the hunting business. Now, you worked for Cabela's Tags at some point?
Yeah, so after the family we sold the operation in 2010. About a year later, I went to work for Cabela's or sometime right in there. But that was a kind of unique opportunity. I had the opportunity to go on a lot of hunts prior to that with Cabela's. I got to know a lot of these trips, which gives you the knowledge and expertise to go do. So yeah, I went to work at Cabela's Outdoor Adventures, Cabela's Tags, which has turned into, I think it's Worldwide Trophy.
Yeah, WTA bought it. Yeah.
Anyway, but I know a lot of those guys over there. That was an interesting job, because you learned about all these outfitters and all these nuances, especially in the western states. We're talking elk, where to apply, mule deer, where to apply, all these different things. And once you kind of break it down and get to know these things, there's a lot of misinformation out there.
You bet. Well, so much of that's moving to a technology-based business, and we do that through our firm. We do book some hunts and advise on draw applications and hunting out west, but so much that's moving to a technology-based business. It's be interesting to see what happens in the hunting industry in the next 10 years. We had a glass of tea earlier. We were talking about the turnover in some of the older hunters. In the next 10 years, the guys that have traditionally spent so much of the money and done so much for conservation and gone on the high-end hunts and bought these governor's tags and traveled overseas, those guys are getting old, man. So it's going to be interesting to see what happens in the hunting economy and in the future, because like my generation is going to have to step in and be willing to spend the money to keep conservation going and be a voice and not take this passive approach to hunting. Like, you know, if you got a business position like I've got or like you've got, it's really easy to keep your hunting in the background and not be an advocate for it because you don't want to offend anybody. Well,
right.
That's, you know, long term it's really bad for the sport. So it's going to be interesting to see what happens moving into the future.
It is. You know, and to your point, as far as stepping up, spending money, there's two ways you can get into these premier units. I mean, and not to say you have to be in a premier unit, because I use a strategy that, you know, and I'm going to apply in certain units that I know, you know, have these trophy elk or trophy mule or whatever.
Yeah.
But if I don't draw, I can go to a state like Nebraska or South Dakota or Colorado, over-the-counter archery elk, these kind of things. So it's really more how you set up your portfolio. And you can do it on a $2,000 budget, or you can do it on a $200,000 budget. Now, if I got $200,000 to spend, I can buy my way into the Arizona Strip.
Sure.
With some of these lottery or some of these tags that are at auction.
Governor's auction tags.
But I still have access as just an everyday guy. I have access to that unit too through that draw process.
Hey guys, let's talk real estate for a second. Buying or selling a piece of land may be the largest financial transaction you'll ever make. Gary Keller once said, there are two kinds of real estate agents, those who list property and those who market property. At Mock Ranches, we are ranch marketing experts. So choose a real estate firm that specializes in land sales and understands land management. Learn more at mockranches.com and receive a free ranch map when you mention the Bucks to Business podcast. That's mockranches.com.
So for this episode's feature listing, we're actually bringing you a pocket listing in Brown County, just outside of the town of Blanket, Texas. The ranch is completely high fenced. It's 283 acres with 190-inch genetics. And the ranch comes turnkey. It's got a very comfortable cabin, a recently built barn, feed bins, hunting blinds, protein feeders, corn feeders. The ranch is about 2/3 scrub oak and live oak with a small pond and then a large lake on one end and a food plot around the lake that attracts a lot of dove hunting. Matter of fact, the current owner brings in as many as 20 dove hunters at a time to entertain clients. This is a great turnkey hunting operation that comes complete with 50% mineral ownership and really big deer. You can step into this ranch and start hunting tomorrow for your family or as a commercial operation with clients. If you're interested in this ranch or another, get a hold of us at mockranches.com. Well, if your goal is to kill a 200-inch mule deer, 180-inch mule deer, whatever, do you think it's better to go through that auction process or the lottery process, the draw process? Because if a guy's just starting, I guess we're going to transition into mule deer here. If a guy's just starting, man, it seems intimidating, right? Because Colorado, there's guys that have 20 and 30 preference points. And the preference point creep in some states is getting such that I'll never catch up.
Well, now if we break that down even further and we're talking, you know, individual units.
Yeah.
Eastern Plains, Colorado, 0 to 2 or 3 points. You can hunt out there. Now, that's private ground. You're going to have
we hunt out there. I booked a lot of hunts on the Eastern Plains. That's some of the first hunts I booked. We've got access to 160,000 acres of private on the Eastern Plains, some of the better country out there.
Right.
It's exclusive, and you can do that stuff. Archery over the counter. Rifle, we've got landowner tags, and like you said, a point or 2 points to draw any of those tags out there.
Right.
Because it's all privately controlled. Now you can kill some bruisers.
Oh, there's big deer out
We killed 3 deer this year over 200, and our historic average over the last 12 years is right at 180. So,
that's what's
big
cool.
deer out there.
That's what's cool about Colorado. I mean, literally, you can kill a Boone and Crockett deer in just about any unit there. So, what's your strategy become? So, me as a non-resident hunter in Arizona, I mean, I know I've done an Eastern Plains hunt before, but now I'm thinking, well, I'd like to hunt maybe the Gunnison Basin somewhere.
Yeah, I'd love to hunt Gunnison.
Yeah, so now I've shifted. Now I'm like sitting on about, you know, I'm probably in no man's land right now with 8 or 9 points. Yeah. So it's either waited out or cash them in on some other unit. But different units are taking different amounts of points. And now so we apply that same philosophy to other western states. Like we can do it in Utah or Arizona. It took me 14 years to draw Arizona. And it helped a lot when I moved there. Got in the non-resident pool. But it's something, I guess what I would emphasize is definitely if you're interested in that sort of thing, you're either going to, make a lot of money, you're going to buy your way in, or you're going to start, putting some money into some of these draws. And you'll be surprised over time because I've been doing it now. I think I started really in earnest and doing quite a bit about 2001 or 2 or 3, somewhere right in there. So a little over 10 years now, maybe 13, 14 years now. I've drawn the Vividal in New Mexico. That's a heck of a good tag. That's a heck of an elk tag. I've drawn mountain goat in Colorado. Mm-hmm. I've drawn the Arizona strip for mule deer. Incredible tag. I've drawn several good tags. I guess is my point in that span of time. And I'm paying basically, unless I hire an outfitter, which you can or cannot. It's your choice. I'm doing some of these hunts for just a couple $1,000s.
So if you're the average guy listening to the podcast and you can afford to spend on tag applications, let's say you can afford to lay out $1,000 or a couple grand a year to plan your hunt, and then courses it costs you a little bit more to go and hunt. Whether you hire an outfitter or not, right? Let's leave that to them. But if you got to draw the tag first,
right?
So what strategy would you look at? Because there's opportunity states, there's units in each state that are opportunity units, and if a guy can hunt well enough, like I'm the kind of guy that I typically don't look at the strip. I'm just going to assume that I'm never going to hunt the strip unless I'm making enough money that I'll just go buy a tag, but. Right. I'm not planning on applying to draw the strip because I want to hunt every year, and if I want to go hunt deer, I'd rather go to a unit that takes a couple of points, and hopefully I can out hunt the next guy or settle for a nice buck. I mean, I'd kill a 170-inch mule deer every day of the week, and
so as a
especially on public land.
If you called me when I was at Cabela's as a consultant, and I'm listening to what you're saying, I would say, if we're only going to do one or two, definitely probably Colorado would be my first choice. Because there's a variety of units, a variety of points. Yeah. You have opportunity in that state and great opportunity. Great mule deer hunting. Yeah. So it's probably the number one mule deer state, in my opinion, for non-residents especially. But then I would look at other western states or states such as Nebraska, over-the-counter tag there.
I had no idea until I hunted there with you and JW last year that there was that much over-the-counter land in Nebraska. There's even some public land in Nebraska that people don't know about. Sandhill stuff.
Doesn't get a lot of attention.
Doesn't get much attention.
Yeah, very little.
Mainly locals road hunting off the road. Like you can walk a mile, maybe tops or something.
That's your Omaha guys. We like to give them a hard time, but they'll come up. Some of them know, but it's surprising how few hunters you'll see out there on that Nebraska public land. But you can still go knock on doors in Nebraska or get to know a few people, and this is a point to be involved with SCI in your local chapter or work with a consultant. And now you have other options out there, as far as online options.
Yeah.
I like those for the information you can get, but I also like the one-on-one with the consultant.
Yeah, I'm a big fan.
That you can pick up the phone and say, hey, what do you know about this? Because if I know the guy and I like him and I trust him, we'll probably do some business together in the future. And so
I'm a sucker for a good haggling over deal.
First-hand information, right? So
that's why we started our Field Pursuit in 2008, because we were willing to go research information. And the bigger thing is you got to deal with a person.
Right.
And we like that.
Right. So that's what I would get involved if you're sitting out there listening to this and saying, how can I get started? Get involved with SCI or some of your local, it doesn't have to be SCI, it had to be one of them, but get involved with your local organizations, get to know some people, pick up the phone a little bit. People love to talk about hunting.
Yeah.
And just tell you what I know. And that's a great thing about the hunting community is people are, pretty friendly typically, and they like to share their experiences.
So when we talk about hunting the sandhills in Nebraska, you and I have a mutual friend who you introduced me to him. You've known him your whole life. J.W. Simonson out there. J.W.'s got 40-ish thousand acres that is available, and we this year started to work in an exclusive lease deal for J.W. to get this place leased. We've got some video and photos of some really good deer. We were talking about earlier.
Yeah.
We've got those deer posted on our social media page, and we'll share them again. But a non-typical buck that'll score in the mid-180s, and then a clean typical buck that's probably 190 kind of a deer. Mm-hmm. JW sent pictures of several others late, like in the rut, when those deer started moving, that he started seeing that were in that 180 range. And the whitetail, good night. I mean, the guy wants to go kill sure enough, Pope and Young, 160-inch whitetail, free range.
They're there.
That's a good place to look.
And that's, that part of Nebraska is really where east meets west. I mean, the Sandhill's undeveloped because it's not very tillable, most of those places. Now, you go east into Iowa, and, of course, everything's tillable. So it's kind of east meets west. Here's your mule deer, here's your whitetails right there. And that's what makes it fun. Now, we're talking over-the-counter tag.
Yes.
I just go online and buy this thing, and I can literally use this tag on whatever I see there. You're always going to see...
It's a deer tag. Mule deer or whitetail, it's a deer tag.
Yeah, it's a deer tag.
We hunted both when I was up there.
Yeah.
You can get over-the-counter pronghorn also.
Yeah, that's right. So literally your day can start out, glassing on a hill for, a big muley. They like to come on the meadows at night and up, up in the hills. And the day we've seen that.
That's what we did. We had the rye fields.
And then in the evening you might go sit on a stand for a big whitetail. So that's what's fun about, that situation. But and again, it's the local knowledge of those kind of things. Like, okay, let's say I'm a guy out there and I'm applying for a tag in Colorado or wherever else, something I'm interested in. It's a swing for the fence type tag if I get it. But if not, I got these other options available to me. So that's how I've always done it myself. And I'm going hunting every year.
Okay. Now your strip tag this year, it took you said 14 years to draw the strip tag.
Yeah, I think that's what it was. It's for non-resident, you can draw it. It's very low odds, but because of that, I mean, it's a world class, just unbelievable what you're going to see in there. I've seen more big deer in 4 days than I've probably seen in the previous 40 years.
So there's two polar opposites. Let's compare those two for a mule deer hunter. You've got Nebraska, eastern Colorado, same style of hunt.
Yeah, real similar.
Similar ecoregion, real similar style of hunt. Mm-hmm. And we're up there, we've probably seen 20 whitetail a day, maybe a few more.
Something like that.
And then a couple of shooters we'd usually see a day glass, and they're hard to get on because it's open country. But if a guy was up there for a week just hunting whitetail, you're going to get a shot, I think.
It depends, really what your game is. If your game becomes, look, we're hunting one certain buck, it's going to take some work. It's going to take a little time. But you're probably going to have an opportunity to put your time in. Otherwise, I mean, if you're in a good stand, you should have whitetails underneath you every night. Yeah. Just, can you get the right one?
Sorry, guys. We got another gentleman coming to join us, and he seems to be lost. We get on the phone. So, tell me about... Well, hold on. Let me see. Hey, man, you finding us? Did you just try to call me? Oh, heck, there's another guy trying to find me. All right, let me call you back. We're recording a podcast. Sounds good. I'll talk to you soon, bye. All right, sorry about the interruption.
Yeah, no problem.
Yeah, so we contrast that where, we saw... I hunted for 4 days. I think I was there 4 days.
Yeah, 4.5, something like that.
And we would do the same thing. In the mornings, we would set up in high points and we'd glass out into the rye fields or alfalfa fields or...
Just could be just hay fields.
Creek bottoms, hay fields, whatever. We'd glass and we'd find... There's whitetails and mule deer in there.
Yep.
And so we'd find deer and then we'd try to pattern that. If it's a whitetail, we'd say he's walking by this tree. We'd put a tree stand set up in it. Or JW would have already had one.
Yeah.
And then if it's a mule deer... Those deer are going to move up into the sandhills or into a shelter belt during the day.
Yeah.
And we go try to put a stalk on that deer. Okay.
Right.
And I missed a big deer the first morning, I think.
I think it was first.
Second day or first morning.
A really good deer.
A good deer.
This is the deer you want.
Yeah, this is a 175.
It was painful for all of us.
It was very painful. Deer comes up, we glass this buck a mile away. That evening before we'd seen it, there was in this hayfield, right off the county road, there was a group of does, a dozen or so does, I guess, but no buck in there. And this is Halloween, so they should be rutting. So JW figured a buck would have moved in there overnight with these does. And so we go to this high point in the sandhills that next morning. We get set up with our spot and scopes. All three of us got glass, and we're standing up there silhouetted because, of course, it's just cracking daylight. We glass in this hayfield, and there's sure enough a buck in there, a good buck,
about a mile away.
About a mile away.
Yeah.
And so we're thinking, well, let's see which way he goes. If he moves into the shelter belt to the north, or if he comes west towards the sandhills.
Well, and here's what's interesting, and this is the value of local information, because I can remember distinctly JW said, a lot of times, I don't know, because you're looking at that country, you don't really know why they do what they do. They just do. He said they like to a lot of times come right up through here, right where we were.
Yeah.
And by golly, that's what he did too. We just watched him come from a mile, and they literally come to within about 50 yards,
40 yards? Yeah.
They're right there. So
that sucker comes straight to us. We were thinking he'd go into the sandhills close to us, but we would have to, we'd have
make
to
a move,
parallel and make a move, get in front of them or bed them down, and that when they get into those sand hills, it's real. JW calls them choppies, but it's real choppy, rolling hills, and so it's pretty conducive to stalking.
Oh, it is.
It's real quiet walking in the sand.
Yeah. And
those bucks and does, they'll bed down over a hill with the wind in their face and the hill at their back, and so you can come up over the top of them. They're pretty vulnerable from behind if you come over the top of them.
Yeah. So
we're sitting there watching these deer run across this big flat towards us, and damn if they're not coming straight to us.
That's what they did, too.
Right to us. And so we all lay down, and I'm like, we're going to get a shot right here. So I get my bow, and I slide down behind this, I don't know, it was yucca bush or prickly pear or something. Slide down the hill just a little bit, and y'all are up above me laying on your backs, and the first doe comes over the hill, and I range her. She's got this dozen does, and the buck's the last one coming.
Yeah.
This doe comes over the saddle, I'm guessing like 40 yards, but I pick my rangefinder up, range her, 0 yards. I'm like,
that's right. I forgot about that.
This is a bad deal right here.
Yeah.
So I'm leaning. I'm like, sure, there's hitting the grass or what's going on. So I range her. No, the second doe comes over. I range 1 yard. Third doe comes over. Nothing. My rangefinder. It was cold. It was
misreading for whatever reason.
It was misreading. If the battery was too cold or the unit just sucked or what.
Yeah, I forgot about that.
But the rangefinder would not read at all. And so the buck comes over the saddle just as casual as you can be. And I'm shooting every day to 100 yards.
Yeah.
Buck comes over saddle, just casual as you can be, stops broadside, no clue we're there, and rangefinder didn't work. So I think I dialed to 40. And I shoot a Trophy Ridge React adjustable sight, right? So I dialed to 40 yards, draw back, squeeze it off, and goes just right under him.
Yeah.
And he runs to the opposite hill, and broadside, he doesn't know what happened.
No.
Goes opposite side, broadside again, and I guessed 80. Draw back again, shoot, right under. You're talking about inches under the deer.
Just inches.
Just inches, both shots. And come to find out it was the rangefinder. So from that hunt on, I used JW's rangefinder.
Well, that's a great point, is make sure that there's different values to what these things cost out there. The one I have costs a little bit more money, but it's never failed me.
Yeah, well, I've got a really nice rangefinder right now.
Yeah, because, when you're bow hunting, that's so critical. In that open country, 10, 15 yards make a lot of difference. It's hard to, once you get out past 40, and sometimes we're shooting
10 yards past 40 is 10 inches.
Yeah,
or a foot.
Exactly.
Or more,
and if they jump the string on you a little bit.
I missed an elk this year in Colorado that was, I shot for 50 or 60 yards, and I shot a couple inches under him. Yeah. And so I had, 16 inches of arrow drop from 50 to 60 yards, shooting up a pretty steep grade.
Yeah.
And I just didn't take the time to rerange him. So I've learned my lesson range finding in the last couple of years. But so we missed that buck. Then we hunted whitetail for a couple of days, and we're learning the country. We didn't hunt super hard.
No, not really.
We were really wanting to learn the country and see if we couldn't put a group together to lease this ranch or start selling some hunts for JW. And the last day, you and JW go up on a knob. I'm hunting a different area. Y'all go up on a knob and glass, and y'all saw 3 bucks, I guess.
Yeah, north, south, east, and north, south, west is where they were. It's like pick one that looks the biggest.
We went after this buck that was by himself and no does.
Yeah. We
couldn't tell the difference in the 3 bucks, and come to find out, one of them we think was a 190 that the neighbor kid killed.
Yeah.
Real heavy, narrow buck, but a 190.
Heck of a deer.
And we should have gone after him, but we didn't know. And we picked this buck that was by himself. We thought we could get on him, and turns out we did.
And he did what they do, which is, we're pre-rut. It's coming on.
Coming on.
He was a little bit of a younger deer, but he goes up and they find that they got their little bedrooms up there somewhere.
Yeah, little blowouts.
And that's what he did. He went up and found that spot.
Hello, Mr. Chatelier.
What's happening?
How are you?
How are you? Christian Chatelier. Korley.
Sears.
Hey, everybody. Christian Chatelier just joined us. Christian, go grab a chair right up there and you can join us here. We're talking big mule deer.
Oh, I don't want to get a chair then.
Christian's agent with KW Farm and Ranch and just started repping outdoor products and outdoor industry she's in town. But yeah, so this buck, we probably trailed him for a couple miles, I guess, maybe.
Put him in his bed, yeah.
Put him in his bed,
and then it was, the advantage changed.
Yeah.
Now we've got the advantage, so we can make the move on him.
We bedded him down. You stayed a half a mile away, probably. And you were just watching through a spotter,
which is good because if you hit them and you want to see where they're going to go or whatever else, it's good to have maybe a spotter looking different angle, perhaps.
Yeah.
So that's the way we did it. It was awesome to see from my vantage point.
Well, JW and I circled way around out of sight, got up above him, and I guess I got like 45 yards from the deer. And that was as close as I thought I could get because I could see his antler tips, which was perfect. You could see his antlers, but you couldn't see his eyes. He couldn't see me either. It was windy.
Yeah.
Had good stiff crosswind coming up this little basin he was in. And sat there on my knees for as long as I wanted to sit on my knees. My knees were starting to get sore. Yeah. And so I motioned to JW standing him up. So he whistles. And I had the deer range perfect. So mule deer give you that look of death, right? They'll get up and they'll see you and they'll look at you.
Okay.
Unlike a whitetail, they'll look at you.
Yeah.
That's the kiss of death for a mule deer.
Yeah.
So this buck stands up. Or excuse me, he doesn't stand up. JW whistles at him. As soon as he whistles, I draw back. And so I'm sitting there full draw, got the deer ranged, but the deer doesn't stand up. He stays in his bed and he stares a hole through us for a minute plus.
Yeah.
And then when he gets up, he bolts to the far hillside.
Yeah, he just got up and ran. They don't usually do that.
Don't usually do that.
Yeah.
So he bolts to the far hillside, and when I ended up getting a shot at him, I guess I missed the first shot.
Yeah, you missed.
Because I was dialed to 45. He runs to about 60. I didn't let up. Strong crosswind. The deer's angling uphill away from me, so he had a pretty narrow target. And that was a bad shot of mine. I just missed him at 60. Missed him. My yardage was about right. I compensated about right for that, but I didn't compensate enough for the wind.
Yeah.
And so I missed him. And then he runs to the far hill broadside. I ranged him this time with a good rangefinder.
Yeah.
97 yards. So I dialed to 100, and we had a strong crosswind left right. I held on his tailhead and drilled him right in the heart. He runs 40 yards and rolls out.
Yeah, he didn't go very far.
You were watching it. What did you think?
Well, I knew he hit him good because I could see a red mist from where I was sitting.
Yeah, 800 yards away or however far you were.
I could literally see that. And then when he started down that, running away, I could tell he wasn't going to go very far. He actually crashed.
You're probably thinking, what the heck's this guy doing shooting that far? He's already missed him twice.
Well, typically, I don't, me personally, but it's whatever, it's whatever you're comfortable with. Yeah. I'll practice out that far. But, hey, if you practice and you feel comfortable with that, that's not for me to determine.
Yeah.
And sometimes in that big country, we just need to get an arrow in him. We'll get him.
100 yards in a mule deer in that open country is not very far. It's a long way to shoot accurately, but when you start getting inside of 100 yards and you need to get closer, there's not much between you and him to get closer to cover you up.
I've had him literally from 5 yards too.
Yeah.
So that's what's fun about it. That country out there is you can have those kind of hunts, and then in the evening you can have your whitetail hunt. Be right underneath you or whatever. And so and all the other stuff that's out there. You got pronghorn and.
Well, contrast that to your Arizona strip tags. That's what we hunted out in the Eastern Plains, Colorado, Nebraska. Mm-hmm. How do you hunt differently in the strip? And what's the expectation when you go to the strip?
Again, local knowledge is so valuable there because so few people get to go into the strip. And there's a few guys, outfitters, not hard to find online. But I hunted with a guy named Travis McClendon, and he's excellent job. Great
Arizona
outfitter.
Strip Guides.
Arizona Strip Guides, yeah. He's really dialed in. Run a lot of cameras out there. So they know what's going on, and typically, you're going to hunt water if it's a drier year, and you're going to put your time in on those water holes, and it's a mental game. Yeah. And you might sit all day for a couple of days not see a deer. You start to question things. Do I have enough time or whatever? So and you go 7 days.
How much time did you set aside for that?
I set aside a week, but I had an option for another 3 days.
Yeah.
But what happened? It was a wet year. It just kept raining and raining. So. What we could do, our options were limited. We can go from higher ground to higher ground and glass, and there's not that many places in the strip you can do that.
Can't get high enough. There's no elevation.
Can't get high enough, so you can't get. So we were going to these different areas and looking into these chainings, where these deer, and a lot of times we're moving from these little bit more open areas into this heavy cover in the morning. So we were in between. We'd actually just seen a giant, a 240-inch deer. They end up getting a few days later, just a massive deer. And we're kind of bummed out. It's like, oh man, he got into that heavy stuff. We're thinking what we could have done different, kind of disappointed. And we're about a mile from our next spot, and I just look off to the left, and here's this buck. You tell right away he's a shooter.
How far from you?
Oh, probably about 70 yards.
Oh, he's inside. He's getting into bow range pretty close.
Yeah, he's already about there. And, we're on a little tiny trail road that you take an ATV down. It's not like, most vehicles won't go down. You just scratch up your vehicle like crazy. So anyway, I told Travis, I said, hey, just let me out and I'll see if I can make a move here. So I grabbed the bow quick, hopped out, and he's gone. So the deer, we didn't hardly even bugger the deer, And I'm thinking, okay, they're going to come down along this ridge, they're going to parallel, and I might be able to get about a 50-yard shot. I start glass. I got a big cedar between me and the deer. So I'm glassing different things, and I'm like, with the fence, I can't move. I can't go over the fence. They're going to hear me.
Yeah.
It's a complete dead call. So I'm like, what am I going to do? Well, just hang up here and see what the deer are going to do. If they're going to come this way. And I looked up, and I could see them coming straight at me. I'm like, man, that would be awesome if they just keep on coming. And plus, I got this tree so I can draw when they're right here. And that's exactly what happened. I mean, just talk about lucky drawing the tag and being in the right place at the right time. But, yeah, and the deer I needed to be in the lead was in the lead because he was with a smaller buck.
Yeah.
And so he comes
Typically the big one be in the back.
Be in the back. And here he comes. I mean, I seen him kind of through the cedar coming. I'm drawing. I didn't really range that area, but I knew if he got to that tree, he's going to be close enough. It's like a 40-yard shot. And so he gave it to me, and I took it. And the arrow found its mark. And we still didn't know how big that deer was. I mean, he ran off, and we did the blood trail thing. It took about, probably 45 minutes to an hour to find him. When we walked up on him, we were both. I mean, we didn't get ground shrinkage on this deer.
He was a smoker.
Yeah,
what did he end up scoring?
He was gross 225.
In velvet.
In velvet. Yeah.
Velvet.
So you got to do
225.
What is it? 2% deduction. I think.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah. He ended up netting. I want to say 206 if I remember right or something. He's going to be top 10 in the SCI book.
Is that a deer that y'all had on camera that Travis was targeting on camera, or is it a new deer?
No, I don't think he ever did get to have that deer on camera.
New buck.
But, yeah. And that's what's cool about the strip. You're right there. The Grand Canyon is just to the south and north.
Tell us what the strip is. I've heard the Arizona Strip forever, and it wasn't until recently I actually knew where the area was. But most people, especially in Texas, they don't know what the strip is. What is the strip?
So that area north of the Grand Canyon,
okay,
there's just a little slice right in there. Because you got Nevada off to the west, Utah to the north. And it's basically that strip of ground between, those state lines. And it runs over into, keep going east, you get into the Kaibab.
Kaibab.
It's just a different name, but similar.
Similar country.
It's kind of similar, but there's some differences too. It's a lot rougher.
You get in some piñons and maybe some pines and more deciduous trees in there.
Yeah.
Huh?
So you got the 13 units. 13A and B is the strip, and then the 12. I think the A and B is the Kaibab. Any of those tags are great tags. The best of the best is probably the 13B tag, and again, that's what I've been trying to draw on.
So if you're listening to this podcast, I'm going to go out on a limb and assume you like to hunt. I bet you like to hunt for free even more. Go to feverpursuit.com/podcast and subscribe for a chance to win a free hunt. That's feverpursuit.com/podcast. You drew a Nevada tag, a really good Nevada tag too.
I did. I turned it back. Actually,
you're lucky son of a gun this year.
Yeah, I was. Well, that's why you play the tags game. And what you want. I guess the take home message is, if you're younger, especially if you're a younger guy, but even if you're, 30, 40, get started because you are going to end up pulling a few of these tags. I mean, people don't think they're going to, but they do. So, I seen it every day when I worked at Cabela's. And it's pretty fun when you get that notification. I drew this tag, it's going to be a great hunt. And plus, you're not fighting near the numbers in those kind of units, the numbers of hunters. Typically you're doing a general season hunt. There's going to be a lot of other guys out
far
there.
Different. That you contrast that, right? The Eastern Plains, Colorado, Nebraska, where it's private land, not many hunters.
Right.
You go to the Strip, not many hunters because tags are so hard to get.
Right.
I hunted, Christian, have you hunted mule deer?
Nope.
No? Okay.
What
are you good for around here?
Well, I'm your white son.
I hunted mule deer in southern New Mexico, desert mule deer.
Uh-huh.
I guess the Strip, is that classified deserts?
No, that's classified as
they're rocky.
Yeah,
Rocky
they're
Mountain
rocky.
Mule deer? Okay.
Yeah, they're rocky.
I hunted deserts in Deming, out of Deming, Daddle, New Mexico with Phil Treadwell a few years ago.
Yep.
Unit 21A or 21B, I don't remember.
Uh-huh.
Killed a nice buck with a bow. We covered a ton of. It's rough country, so I guess it's kind of like the Strip. It's just rough, rocky kind of country.
Yeah.
Low brush mainly.
Mm-hmm.
Covered a lot of country. Spent a lot of time around glass, and I tell you what's crazy. We hunted them during the rut. I hunted them in January, first week of January, and those bucks there. That's over the counter deer tag also.
Yeah.
We hunted a combination of private and state land and BLM, but it was over the counter for the bow hunt. But man, if you wouldn't, I had some guys hunt that November. Rifle hunt. I think it's November hunt. Some clients of mine, we sent up there to hunt the same ranch during the November rifle hunt. And, they hunted for a week and seen one shooter piece and shot, and that's the buck they killed.
Yeah.
And they were telling me how hard it was to glass deer. They weren't seeing very good numbers of deer. And it wasn't the rut during the rifle hunt. Man, we saw 2 or 3 shooters a day.
Really?
But what you would do, we'd sit down and we could see a couple miles with our spotters and start glassing. You'd see a doe or you'd see a fawn up.
Yeah.
And then you'd start picking that mountain apart, and all of a sudden there's 10 of them. And it's the ruts. You're like, well, there's a buck here somewhere. And you just keep your eyes on them. That's the importance of good glass because you don't get eye fatigue.
It's huge.
Huge to have good glass. That's the first hunt I went on where I realized how important it was to have good glass.
Yeah.
So you wouldn't get eye fatigue, and all of a sudden you'd see it a mile or a mile and a half or even 2 miles with better glass than I have. But Phil had great stuff. You'd see an ear flicker behind a bush, or you'd see an antler turn behind this cedar bush or whatever kind of bushes those were up there.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden there's the buck.
See, that's
So
a lot
how do we
like
go
hunting,
get to him?
That's like hunting your coos deer in Arizona.
Yeah.
I mean, it's really a lot like hunting sheep.
Well, without the
But
does, though, you would have never... I realize now when these rifle hunters said they didn't find any deer because without the does and the fawns and those numbers... Because those bucks up there travel a lot of country putting groups of does together.
Yeah.
Matter of fact, that deer I killed, his feet were almost raw from walking in them rocks for so many miles to gather up his does. And Phil told me that those bucks have a big mountain lion problem. And the lions kill so many bucks up there because they travel so far to run to gather does up. And in the wintertime, late January, February, their feet are raw, and they just lay up on a sunny hillside resting. You know, that's when lions get them.
You know, see, and this is back to our point earlier made about the local information.
Yeah.
I mean, there's a lot of good information online, but it's still somewhat general.
Yeah.
I drew a 2B, which is northern New Mexico tag, which is one of the best tags in New Mexico a few years ago. Mm-hmm. That hunt happens the first part of January, and what you're hunting big country. It's
That's outside of Chama. Where is that 2B?
You got to go west of Chama.
West of Chama.
Yeah, I was over there, kind of that Farmington, somewhere over in there. But what you're doing on that hunt is you're up and on these oil roads and doing a lot of driving and stopping and looking this and that. But the problem you run into is you got this freezing and thawing effect.
Yeah.
So it is unless you get a fresh snow, it is so noisy in there you can't really do anything. But you're not going to sneak on them. I had a great tag, but I had a really tough hunt because of the conditions, and you're going to experience that on that kind of hunt. So do you want to apply for that tag, or do you want to apply for the tag that you're talking about? And that's why you need to know somebody.
We hunted.
Know more about it.
I drew a good Southwest Colorado mule deer tag 3 years ago, and my buddy that went with me had an elk tag. So we just said, let's go together. Well, it turns out the elk and the mule deer were not in the same country, so it was kind of a tricky trip to navigate. But saying that, we had an opportunity to a really big mule deer and a really nice public land bull. Mm-hmm. But this deer tag took 1 point to draw, so I could plan on hunting this unit every other year. And I think I could go in there and kill a good buck every other year. Now, what I know now.
Right.
But these deer were down in the oak country. And it was early. It was September. It was or maybe it was the first week of September. Mm-hmm. And these deer were not up high. They were down in some of that oak country and oak brush. They were still at 10.5 probably, 10,000 feet or 10.5 even. But they weren't up in the high country like you'd expect them to be. But this was an easy unit to draw. So here's a far polar opposite for somebody. I could have killed some 2-year-old 4-points, full velvet, pretty bucks, but 2-year-old 4x4s. And then I had a really nice 30-inch 3x3 and had him at 100 yards, and I wasn't confident taking that shot. We walked into this burn. There's a bunch of cattle in that. So you start getting easier to draw mule deer tags, and there's a lot of factors that you deal with. All of a sudden, the hunting becomes a little tougher because there's tons of cows in this unit, so we're stampeding cows everywhere we went, stalkers in there.
That's going to blow everything out.
It blows everything out. Yeah. So we had just come through this herd of cattle that had stampeded and got chased by a bull and all this, and then we're walking down a road, and we're kind of getting this old burn, and about 20 yards ahead of us, we see this little young forky mule deer buck right on the side of the road, and some old, I guess it's little bitty aspens that are growing up really thick. And this buck's standing there about 20 yards, and he lays straight down. It was the craziest thing. Because we learned there's a lot of summertime hiker traffic in this unit. So those deer were used to how to get away from the people and hide from the people. So this buck saw us walking up down this Forest Service road, and he just laid down.
Yep.
And so we didn't know if there's another buck with him maybe that would have already laid down. So I drew my bow back, and we just started walking in on him. Mm-hmm. And I told Scott, I said, hey, throw a stick in there or something. Make these things stand up. We literally got 2 yards from this buck before he stood up. It's like flushing quail out. He was going to hide from us right there and let us walk by him.
Yeah.
And so we did all this, and we walk up, and we get into this bigger burn area, and it's mid-morning. We're not expecting to see. We're kind of wanting to set up for somewhere during the day. And I look up ahead of us, and there's a smoker buck, 30-inch. It was a 3-point, didn't have forks in the back, but 30-inch smoker buck.
Yeah.
Standing right there, staring a hole in us, and we're standing there with our,
That's how it happens.
GPS in our hands,
You're
like
not
a couple
ready.
of rookies.
You're not ready.
We weren't ready. And anyway, we get on this buck, we're hunting him, and then here comes somebody on a 4-wheeler checking cows, and here comes some backpackers walking by.
Yeah.
And so the opportunities are a lot more limited on those higher traffic public land units that you can draw everywhere.
Right.
But I do think a guy that wants to hunt mule deer, and even hunt good mule deer, can go learn, like take a summer trip up there. Draw one of these tags, these one or two point tags.
I would contrast that with, I just spent the last couple weeks hunting Arizona.
Yeah.
And where I was sitting at,
Hunting coos deer.
I'm only 45 minutes out of two. No, this was, you can hunt coos deer or you can hunt mule deer. But in this case, I was looking for mule deer. But I was the only guy in there. I'm only 45 minutes out of Tucson on my own little set of mountains.
Yeah.
So, those kind of opportunities are out there. You just kind of need to know.
You know where they're at.
It really is local knowledge. You can't emphasize that enough when you're talking public land.
Yeah.
All the little things that go on in there.
Well, some places, too. I think a guy's odds go up tremendous when you go in the summertime, take a little vacation, take the kids if you want to, load them up, take some snacks in your 4-wheeler and go scout a little bit.
Yep.
Get a pattern on these deer and find the mountains that are holding deer and find the food sources and the water sources.
Yep.
And if you're hunting these over-the-counter units or these 1 or 2 point draw units, you can still have, I think, really good success doing that.
Oh, you can.
And then there's other opportunities like West Texas. So my buddy Jim Breck Bean, who we interviewed for I think episode 2, maybe 3, Jim Breck's got a couple of 100,000 acres to hunt in West Texas for desert mule deer and Texas mule deer. Mm-hmm. And that's all what we would consider over the counter. You just private land access. You buy a deer license, and if you got access, you can go hunt. And you're looking at about a $7,000, $7,500 hunt to go do that hunt.
Yeah.
And kill a nice deer. They're shooting deer in the 170s, 180s.
Right.
It's a rough, rugged country, but it's a beautiful country.
Sure.
Stay in a lodge every night. So mule deer, they're kind of intriguing. One of my favorite species to hunt.
They are fun.
Can't wait.
We're going to get you, Christian. We're going to get you on a mule deer.
Let's go to the Sands, West Texas, Northwest Texas.
I'd love to do it.
I seen a West Texas mule deer in person about 6 months ago when I was in Lubbock, and Herb Atkinson was there with SCI. He lives in, I think, Roswell, New Mexico, but he was there. We got a new chapter going in Lubbock, or a renewed chapter going in Lubbock. Great bunch of young guys, Texas Tech guys.
Okay.
So you don't have to be 60, 70-year-old hunter to be involved. These guys are running their own chapter. But
I think
a member brought this deer over, and this was like a 215. I mean, it was a heck of a non-typical. There's some big deer out there, and that's where he was at.
there's some smokers up in the Panhandle.
Yeah.
That's what I'm talking about.
There's
Lubbock
some.
Mule Shoe area.
Oh yeah, man.
Yes.
Plainview, Lubbock, Muleshoe. Some of those counties up there you can't hunt though. Some of them are closed to hunting. But if you know some of those farmers up there, man, there's some smoker bucks.
Yeah.
It's more of a rifle deal though. It's pretty solid to hunt them with a bow.
Like I was saying earlier, get involved with with your local chapter, or just people, and start talking about it, because you'll learn all these kind of things.
Yeah.
It's amazing what you learn just getting out there talking to people.
Well, I think hunting is we got to be careful in North America that we don't turn hunting in North America, which, by the way, when North America was not first discovered, because there were indigenous people here, right? But when the Europeans and the Spaniards first came over here, we all the time say it's for religious freedom. A lot of it was freedom to hunt and fish too. The European model for hunting is the wealthy get to play only.
Right.
So we have to be real careful in North America that we don't turn North America into that. It's getting really expensive to hunt. But there's a new movement that I'm pretty encouraged by, and it's kind of the hipster deal, honestly, but wanting to know where your food comes from. And we got a population of hunters. Mm-hmm. And we have a population of anti-hunters. The bigger opportunity for us to go influence people is in the middle, the non-hunters. That's where the majority of the population lies, in the non-hunters. Yeah. But with this whole movement of people wanting to know where their food comes from, and hunt or eat grass-fed, organic, natural, whatever meat. Well, there's no more pure way to get that and a guaranteed grass-fed, all-natural protein source than hunting wild game.
It doesn't get much more natural than eating a deer.
That's right. Much more natural, low fat.
Humans have been doing it for a long time.
They've been doing it a long time.
I'm not exactly sure how long, but it's been a while.
Yeah. Hey, honey, would you like a side of roots with your venison steak?
And this is a guy that grew up in the cattle business, so I've seen it both sides. It's unique, and the market has done a pretty good job of sorting these things out, because to feed a growing world like we're going to have to do, we do have to have high production agriculture. We have to have an efficient system.
We have to.
But the market also allows, the system allows for me to go out and harvest a deer and eat that as well. So we'll get the opportunity to do both. And to your point on what it costs, you can still, some of these hunts are very expensive to get a guarantee, but you can find hunts out there. Maybe they don't have the trophy quality, but you can still find hunts out there where you can go have the opportunity and take an animal. Maybe it's a doe, but it's great protein.
We have to protect that. We have to protect the ability for somebody to go hunt on a budget and take their kids hunting and teach them the outdoors at an affordable price. Kill some meat.
That's why that's what I like about SCI, and the little bit of the misconception that that's not who it's for. It's for everybody. It's for hunting rights for all of us.
I love that.
Yeah, and so that's really why I enjoy the job. I enjoy working with the chapters, because that's who the chapter people are. That's who the people in Austin, Texas are. Yes, a few of them in the chapter might travel to Africa, but most of them are your local hunters right here. Same thing over in Kerrville or San Antonio or Corpus or Lubbock, or where all these chapters we have around the place. So that's what I really enjoy doing, is meeting those kind of folks and talking about these kind of stories.
Well, thanks for hanging out with us, Korley.
Yeah, it's been great.
Well, this is our second episode featuring SCI, so hopefully it generates some members and some fundraising, and it helps get the word out there that SCI is not all about Africa. Africa's great. I want to go there one day.
It's awesome. Yeah.
It's awesome. But
that's kind of what you aspire to. I want to do that someday too, but in the meanwhile, I want to be...
There's a lot of North America that I want to hunt too.
That's right.
Christian, you got any closing thoughts?
No, I appreciate you just letting me sit in.
Thanks for coming in, man.
Appreciate you.
All right, guys. Appreciate it. Y'all go look up your local SCI chapter and get involved. Appreciate you listening. See you.